Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got hump day. We're halfway through the week here. Got a great show for you today. I'm going to start out talking about this Rittenhouse case, and the jury is still out. I just want to give you one quick preference here. By the time you're seeing this show, they may have come back with the verdict, because people think they're going to come back with the verdict today. But we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. And then we're going to talk about the FBI. More evidence is coming out now that the FBI is literally tracking parents, the whole school board thing, like they were actual terrorists. And we're going to expand upon that. But before we go any further, I always have to talk about some deals for you, some opportunities. Look above the video, no matter when or where you're watching it, and check out the link BDU, Big Daddy Unlimited. It's all things Second Amendment. Click on that, follow the instructions, and you will get factory direct pricing delivered directly to your door, not only on guns and ammunition, but over 100,000 related items. Check it out. And if you want to see just how good a deal you can get, check out Denny's deals. Denny comes on across John Martin Talks Facebook site. He also is on our excluded Facebook site. You spell it by dropping the E, put the big X up there, excluded. Denny comes on an hour before us at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, about 15-20 minutes. He takes a few products from the Big Daddy Unlimited arsenal. He demonstrates, talks about them, but then he gives you the factory direct pricing on those items. Once you see just how much you can save, go back above our video, click on that BDU link, and those savings will be yours. And as I've been telling you, Christmas is right around the corner. And what says I love you more than maybe like a 9mm stocking stuff or something like that? BDU. Check it out. All right, let's get into a case that really is literally about the Second Amendment, and that is from Breitbart. We're doing a story here. Rittenhouse, lying media deliberately incite riots in Democratic-run cities. Now, this is an opinion piece from a guy named Nolte that does a lot for Breitbart. So check it out. This is from when Kenosha was actually on fire, the mostly peaceful protest. That's what that picture is. And, yesterday we talked a little bit about, does Rittenhouse lose his Second Amendment rights when he brings a gun, according to the prosecutor there. So if you want to see our podcast, there's several ways to do that. One of the ways, of course, is to go to Rumble. We're now on Rumble live every day. And good morning, Rumblers. I guess that's how you say it. But Rumble appears to be a free speech alternative to many other social media sites. But another way to do it, I mentioned excluded Facebook. There's a thing called the excluded app. So go to your app store, spell excluded by dropping the E, put the big X up there, and you can get our show on that app archived every day, as well as a lot of other information, including some in-house productions there. So check out the excluded app. But let's get into this. The only way the establishment media can feel influential anymore is to incite riots in Democratic-run cities. That is so true. So the media are desperately using the Kyle Rittenhouse trial to incite riots in Democratic-run cities. And I mentioned this yesterday on the show, that the left, the media, this article is mostly about the media, but I'm going to bring some politicians into it as well, because the progressive left and their support network called the mainstream media, they are desperate for cities in America to burn. I mean, that's my opinionated fact, but I think it's a fact nonetheless, because they're desperate, because they can't run on their record. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But here it says, let me read this part again right here. Democrat-run cities, so the media are desperately using the Kyle Rittenhouse trial to incite riots in Democrat-run cities. It is absolutely true. There's no doubt about that. But they're also backed up by their progressive buddies. I want to play you a few videos as we go along here. This first one is Mad Maxine Waters. Now, this was on the officer was being tried for murder. Remember when he was being tried for murder? Schoen, I think was his name. And Maxine Waters was outside the courthouse on the street, and this is what she was saying. Check it out.
The bill in Congress passed on police reform, but I know that the right wing, the racists, are opposed to it, and I don't know what's going to happen to it, but I know this: we've got to stay in the street, and we've got to demand justice.
As a black man, despite all of the efforts, I feel like nothing changes. And George Floyd is waking so many people up, yet nothing has happened. Despite the rhetoric, like what needs to happen that's different this year than all the years before?
We're looking for a guilty verdict. We're looking for a guilty verdict.
Keep it running, but they're looking for a guilty verdict in this Rittenhouse case as well. So she could be saying this on the streets of Kenosha. Keep it going.
If nothing does not happen, then we know that we've got to not only stay in the street, but we've got to fight for justice. But I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that will say guilty, guilty, guilty. And if we don't, we cannot go away.
And not just manslaughter, right? I mean...
Oh, no, not manslaughter. No.
Hear what she's saying there, and that's kind of a lengthy video, but she's saying that we must stay in the streets. In other words, keep rioting, because that's what they were doing. We got to get in their face. She's talking about police officers, anybody else. Get in their face. This is very, very threatening video. And so I agree with the writer of this article that the media is pushing this, but I'm not going to let these politicians off the hook, because they are pushing violence too. The progressives that have literally taken over and own the Democratic Party. It ain't your granddaddy's party anymore. It belongs to Maxine Waters, Ocasio-Cortez, Pelosi and the like. That's who run it. Progressive, hardcore leftists, in many cases outright communists like Bernie Sanders, are running the show right now. Because their credibility with an influence, back to this article, over the public is completely shot, and I agree with that. What media has any credibility? The only credibility you get is when you watch people like me. We have some credibility, but the mainstream media, what credibility do they have? That's why, by the way, that I tell you all the time, not everybody can be in the fight, but everybody can support those of us in the fight, like me and Billy Bob. I'll tell you more about him later, those of you who already know him. But that's why you got to be progressive in this sense, I should say mainly proactive in searching out what we're doing, sharing it far and wide, and letting people know what's happening, because this message needs to get out. But back to this article. Because their credibility with the influence over the public is completely shot, talking about the mainstream media, encouraging left-wing terrorists in Antifa and Black Lives Matter to burn down blue cities as all they've got. And that's absolutely a fact. And I mentioned this yesterday. It came in the prosecution's closing arguments that basically the people that were there in Kenosha when this fire was burning there were professional protesters, because the prosecutor Dinger, he even said that that there were people who had a lot of experience. They'd been in Seattle, St. Louis. He rattled off half a dozen different cities these people had been, and they were afraid for their life because for the first time they were facing an armed populace in people like Kyle Rittenhouse. So these professional protesters brought their act to Kenosha, and they ran into a little bit of trouble. Check out, as I said, our podcast yesterday. But the media and Dems can't run on their record. That's why they have to have this violence. They have to change the subject. They have to get you thinking about something different than whether or not Biden's boat parade is going to come through and actually bring Christmas to us, that kind of thing. They got to get you distracted from the fact that it's costing you like twice as much to fill up your pickup truck and that kind of thing, and that grocery prices are going up when there's even anything on the shelf. They got to get you away from looking at that, because if you look at that, there's no way you can vote for the Democrats. But if you look at the cities burning and all that, maybe they can distract you. That's what it was about. And like, for instance, the Durham report. We're starting to get more information coming out of the Durham report. One of the things we learned in that is the entire Russia thing with Trump was a total, not a partial, not semi, but a total lie. But see, most of us like that follow my show, for instance, you would have known that already. Because remember, we hadn't talked about the Mueller report in forever, but I'm going to bring it up real briefly right now. The Mueller report, both the report, his press conference after, his testimony before Congress, and even when he retired and closed out his thing, one of the things he said was that there was no collusion between any American and the Russians, not one bit. And last time I checked, much as you may love or hate him, Donald Trump was still an American. So no collusion whatsoever. And yet the media talked about that 24/7 for 2 years and still largely has not apologized nor rescinded anything. And they knew, this is what got me, after the Mueller report came out, and this is what the point I really want to make, when he said no collusion between Russia and any American, they continued to push that lie. The whole thing was nonsense. And the Mueller report, the Durham report now has shown that if there was any collusion, it was 100% on the Hillary Clinton side. But you don't hear that anywhere either. Back to this story. The media first tried to incite riots with the Trayvon Martin hoax by spreading the lie. This is the opinion piece that's in Breitbart. Hoax by spreading the lie that the man who shot Martin is, in an obvious case of self-defense, was white. He wasn't. He was Hispanic. That was the first thing that jumped out at me at that time. And racist on the hunt. All evidence proved that, according to Mr. Nolte, and I think he's right, is a lie. But I want to point out to you, it's not just the media that is inciting violence. I agree with him 100% that the media is definitely inciting violence, but the progressive left is as well. I want to play you this video of then President Obama. I think he's actually still president now, third term of Obama, because I just don't think that Joe Biden is actually running the show, you know. But I'm not saying he doesn't get the most ballots just for algorithm, all due deference and all, but I do believe Obama is pulling the strings behind the scenes. We're going to play this video. This is him after the Trayvon Martin case, or while it was still happening, and he's very polite. And he's, you know, very civil in how he's saying this, but don't think for a minute that this doesn't incite violence. Check it out.
You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. And, you know, I think they are right to expect that all of us as Americans are going to take this with the seriousness it deserves, and that we're going to get to the bottom of exactly what happened.
So he's saying that Trayvon, if he had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin, right? So if you think about that, like I say, he's very civil in how he's doing it. He's very polite. But don't you think he's sending a message out there that, like, hey, it could have been my son, even though he didn't have any sons that killed? And he also, in an earlier video, talked about how, oh, that could have been me out there when he was Trayvon's age and that kind of thing. So he's planting that seed so subtly, but in certain elements of the community, that, hey, if this guy goes free, then, you know, they're basically, could have been your son and all that. These are subtle little things that absolutely can incite violence, and there's some not so subtle. Back to this story, because he gives several examples of how the media has portrayed things. With the hands up, don't shoot hoax, we're talking about the Michael Brown case in Ferguson, which was, by the way, a total, complete lie. And to this day, and we'll get in deeper here in just a second, and to this day, I guarantee you, if you were to do a survey, a polling of the American people, and ask, did Michael Brown hold his hands up and say, hands up, don't shoot? Did he say that? I just about guarantee you that over half the country probably believes he did, which is a complete and total lie. Remember, even the Rams, or the St. Louis Rams at the time, I remember, came out during that time and did a hands up, don't shoot thing as they were running out of the bleachers, out of the locker room and all that. But it says here, with the hands up, don't shoot hoax, the media were able to burn down the predominantly black Democrat-run city of Ferguson, Missouri. Now, we did look at it, get one thing out of that, and this is Cori Bush. She was a Black Lives Matter activist, still is, and essentially took a seat, a congressional seat, based on the lie of hands up, don't shoot. We're going to play this video of her, that most recent one actually, about a month or so ago, when she talked about how, you know, that the police needed to be defunded. In other words, you don't need any protection, but she needs to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on her personal protection. Check it out.
I won't let them get that off. You can't get that off. I'm going to make sure I have security, because I know I have had attempts on my life and I have too much work to do. There are too many people that need help right now for me to allow that. So if I end up spending $200,000, if I spend 10 more dollars on it, you know what? I get to be here to do the work. So suck it up, and defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police and put that money into social safety nets.
That's good enough. So one of the consequences of the hands up, don't shoot hoax out there in Ferguson, Missouri, is we got the gift of Cori Bush, man. I mean, my God, if she serves more than one term up there, I mean, she needs to go today, really. I mean, think about what she says in that video. It just, I have to calm down, because every time I watch that video, there's certain videos when I watch them that just infuriate me. And this is one of them, because she's telling people, a lot of poor people, I mean, Ferguson is not a wealthy community. It has a large African-American population. So she says, and she's saying that your neighborhood needs to be defunded, the police, so you don't need any security. But she could spend $200,000, $200,000, make it rain, it don't matter up in here. My security is paramount. And then she says, if you don't like it, and this is the part that just gets me, she said, if you don't like it, suck it up. So she's telling you, if you're in Ferguson, Missouri, and you're wanting to defend yourself, if you need your Second Amendment, go to the BDU link, as I told you. But if you want to defend yourself, or you want the police to defend you, well, suck it up. Suck it up, punks. Just suck it up. If you're in fear for your life in any of these inner cities run all by Democrats, just suck it up, man. It just pisses me off. It should piss you off too as well. Back to this article. With the Freddie Gray hoax, this is the one in Baltimore, the media were able to burn down the predominantly black Democratic-run city of Baltimore, Maryland. And that's true. But every time I think about what happened in Baltimore, there's one video, and you know, the one I just said pisses me off. This great joy, because there are actually heroes out there. This is a mom, I'll set it up for you. They were having protests outside of this school, and her son was participating in it, dressed all in black, and she wasn't having none of that. So let's see what happens. Check it out. I guarantee you my mom would have done that same thing, man. Ain't no doubt about it. That's good enough. I tell you what, every time I watch that, I'm thinking, we need more moms like her. I mean, you know, I wish she was actually vice president of the United States right now. Then we might have something, you know, instead of Kamala. Did you hear where apparently Biden and Kamala are or their staff are at each other's throats or whatever? But my God, man, we're going to hear from Kamala here before the show's out, just to give you a heads up in case you want to put the children away. But we need more moms like that. She should be the mayor of Baltimore, the governor of Maryland or something, man. I don't know what happened with her, but she's a hero to me. Back to this article. Most recently with the Jacob Blake hoax, this is what happened that started the whole Kenosha riots, where the media made it sound like Jacob Blake was an innocent bystander and was shot and unarmed, and he was not. The police were actually called to that by a woman, a black woman, by the way, that says that he was beating her and she was fearing for her life and he was trying to kidnap her child. That's what the police responded to, and we're not going to play that video right now. It's been played quite a bit, but he had a knife and would not give it up and tried to flee and went into his car and looked like he might have been trying to get a pistol or something. I don't know. and the cops shot him, did not kill him, but the whole thing was like he was some kind of innocent victim. It's ridiculous. But what this article says, most recently the Jacob Blake hoax, the media were able to burn down the Democratic-run city of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Now, I'm going to play you a video. This was just a couple of days at the White House. This is Jen Psaki, the press secretary. It's hard for me to say it any other way. But she is responding to Peter Doocy, who is becoming a hero at Fox News, about Joe Biden. Actually, when I believe he was candidate Biden at the time, literally called Rittenhouse, didn't know anything about the case, nothing, called him a white supremacist, which is certainly adding fuel to the fire, I would think. And this was Jen Psaki's defense, if you will, of Joe Biden. Check it out.
Tied to an ongoing court case, why did President Biden suggest that Kyle Rittenhouse, on trial in Kenosha, is a white supremacist?
So, Peter, what I'm not going to speak to right now is anything about an ongoing trial, nor the president's past comments. What I can reiterate for you is the president's view that we shouldn't have, broadly speaking, vigilantes patrolling our communities with assault weapons. We shouldn't have opportunists corrupting peaceful protests by rioting and burning down the communities they claim to represent anywhere in the country. As you know, closing arguments in this particular case, which I'm not speaking to, I'm just making broad comments about his own view. There's an ongoing trial. We're awaiting a verdict. Beyond that, I'm not going to speak to any individuals or this case.
But the president has spoken to it already. And his mom now, Kyle Rittenhouse's mom, came out saying that the president defamed her son, and that she claims that when the president suggested her son is a white supremacist, he was doing that to win votes. Is that what happened?
I just have nothing more to speak to an ongoing case where the closing arguments were just made. Go ahead.
That's exactly, by the way, what happened. What Peter Doocy just suggested in his question, that is exactly why Biden said what he said, to get votes, adding fuel to the fire. And keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this doesn't get talked about much. Rittenhouse was arrested and charges filed against him in less than 2 weeks after this happened. Now, there's so much, and I bring that up because what that literally tells you, and Judge Janine talked about this on, I think, Tucker Carlson the other night. I don't want to give her credit. She said what that means, and she was a prosecutor herself as well as a judge, what that means is they didn't conduct really any investigation, because she would maintain that in a situation, especially as chaotic as the one that happened with Rittenhouse, that there's no way they could complete an investigation and make charges for murder, let alone anything else, in less than 2 weeks. And also, keep in mind that we now know that the FBI was right in the middle of all of this stuff. We're going to talk about the FBI more in just a minute. But they actually had drone footage. They had a drone literally over Kyle Rittenhouse with this. And when they were questioned about it, they said, oh, we lost the footage. And of course, now they miraculously found the footage. But I say all that to say this: if the FBI, if the local police, and I think their hands were tied, if they were actually there doing their job and not letting this crap go on, not letting the armed wing of the Democratic Party of Black Lives Matter and Antifa burn these places down, none of this would have happened to start with. And believe me, you know good and well, because the media literally, I mean, how many times do they come out and say during that time with Floyd and all this kind of stuff, when they turn around and say these mostly peaceful protests while the city behind them is literally burning to the ground? I mean, they wanted this to happen, and the Democrats absolutely needed it to happen in order to defeat Donald Trump. That's what this is all about. But it said, go on with this. It says, today the media are desperate to prove, and that's a great choice of words, to prove their influence by spreading audacious lies around Kyle Rittenhouse, the young man currently on trial for shooting 3 men, 2 of them who died. Video proves beyond any question, and I would agree with this 100%, that Rittenhouse acted in self-defense. You could make all kind of arguments whether he should have been there, done this or that or whatever, but he had a gun and they tried to take it from him, beat him over the head with a skateboard, and he acted purely in self-defense. And like I said yesterday, and I told you how to check out our podcast, that I think he's going to be acquitted if it's based on the evidence. If it's based on emotion, then maybe not. I mean, maybe not. We might end up with a hung jury and a mistrial. But think about the judge even, going back to Biden real quick, the judge even had to admonish in this case about the president saying what he said and telling the jury to ignore that. Back to this article. But the media are not only lying about him, talking about Rittenhouse, being crazed vigilantes, something akin to a mass shooter. The prosecutor actually called him an active shooter while he's running away and is heard on the video saying, I'm trying to get to the police, man, which were blocks away, by the way. He said they're deliberately lying, talking about the media, to turn this into a racial issue, even though the 3 men he shot were white. So it was a white-on-white crime. Yes, what they're trying to do is create this kind of situation, and this is a video Lexington, Kentucky, and check it out. Burn it down. That is a video after the Breonna, what is her name? Breonna Taylor, I believe, case. And you got Black Lives Matter literally chanting, we didn't get it. In other words, they didn't get the verdict they wanted, so burn it down. So that's the kind of pressure that these jurists are under right now. Like I say, if it goes by the actual evidence, I think that Kyle Rittenhouse will be acquitted. But if it's emotion, think about, Kenosha is a small town, like 100,000. It's a big town compared to my little Hawthorne, but it's, relatively small to medium-sized town. And these people on the jury are all from that area. They got houses, businesses, families, all that kind of stuff. So somewhere, either in the front or back of their mind, they got to think that if we acquit this guy, they're going to burn it down. They're going to be out there chanting, we didn't get it, and burn it down, because they've already burned it down one time. So I just want to point that out. Let's keep going. In this article, he talks about some of these different political figures, and I mentioned Cori Bush, and now the writer is getting to that as well. Representative Cori Bush are deliberately fanning the flames with blatantly dishonest statements about how a Rittenhouse acquittal would be the equivalent of allowing white supremacists to get away with murdering black people, even though there's no evidence that Rittenhouse is a white supremacist and that he shot 3 white people, white-on-white crime. Billy Bob tells me, I talked about Billy Bob a minute ago, I'll briefly introduce to y'all to Nude to Show. First of all, where you been? Howdy, how are you? In the right place now? Not politically correct necessarily, but Billy Bob Bass kind of keeps me straight on the show. He's got a Twitter handle, by the way. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. We're determined to stay in the social media square no matter what, and as I said earlier, we need your help by liking, sharing, commenting on that kind of thing, all that we do. We need to push this message far and wide. But Billy Bob asked me a legitimate question. He said, have any of her, talking about Cori Bush, because she's clearly inciting violence here, she's lying, have any of her videos been banned? I mean, I get, in YouTube jail and Facebook jail and everything else. Equal treatment. I have never said anything remotely close to what Congresswoman Cori Bush said, that white supremacists to get away with murdering black people when there's zero evidence of white supremacy and everybody was white. But any of her videos banned? I doubt it. The media blatantly lied about Rittenhouse illegally possessing a firearm. The firearm was legal. Look at this picture. We showed this yesterday, but I think again, this is the Thomas Binger, what a ringer he is. He's taken the gun. This is the actual gun that Rittenhouse had. He's got his finger on the trigger. He is pointing it, believe it or not, at the jury box. So what could happen now? I mean, these people talk about the Second Amendment, and they don't know squat about gun safety, let alone the Second Amendment. I mean, he not only did, in the video, we're not going to play it right now, but in the video, I guess one of his assistants brings the gun out of an evidence bag. He's wearing gloves to protect the evidence, and this guy takes it with bare hands and points it at the jury with the trigger. I mean, this guy should not serve as a dog catcher, let alone a prosecutor. Back to the story. The media have outright labeled Rittenhouse a murderer, and he's absolutely, Mr. Nolte is absolutely right about that. I could play you 10 15, 20, 100 videos basically showing how they have labeled Rittenhouse a murderer, and he hadn't even been convicted of anything yet. But of course, that's not surprising, because we know the progressives do not believe in the Bill of Rights. They don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in freedom of speech, period. They don't believe in the Second Amendment. They don't even want to talk about that other than take your guns. We're coming for your guns. You clingers out there, as Obama said, clinging to your Bibles and your guns. That's the only time they want to talk about the Second Amendment, because they say that, hey, he's lost his Second Amendment rights when he brought a gun to defend himself, which is totally ludicrous. But innocent until proven guilty, right? That's what you're supposed to have according to the U.S. Constitution. But you shouldn't be surprised about this. I mean, this is little old Kyle Rittenhouse, right? And I'm not downgrading him in any way, but they actually convicted Kavanaugh, right? In the court of public opinion, at least they tried to, when he was being put through the Senate hearing. They basically said that he was guilty, and they wanted him to prove his innocence. I mean, so these, I'd love to know what these progressives actually believe in. Do they believe in any of the Bill of Rights? What part of the Constitution do they actually believe in? Maybe the 25th Amendment under Trump, but they don't seem to believe it, because if it ever needed to be done now, it should be done now against Biden, because they don't believe any of that crap. The media have spread deliberate, like when I say crap, I'm saying they don't believe in the Constitution. I'm not calling it crap. They don't believe any of the stuff they preach. I mean, I've shown you countless evidence. Watch what they do, not necessarily what they say, although when they tell you what they're going to do, believe that. The media have spread deliberate lies about the Rittenhouse judge being a racist, and even used a ringtone to launch a 2-day freakout over the judge being a secret Trump supporter, as though being a Trump supporter is disqualifying. They're trying to make this all about Donald Trump. That's what this is all about. They cannot run on their record. I mean, they've got to distract you. The best way to distract you is to have your cities burning down. That's what this is all about. It has nothing to do with justice or anything like that. I'm going to play you one more video as we close out here, but let me read you this concluding statement here. You don't do these things, talking about the media lying and all that. You don't intentionally spread what you know are lies unless you want to see Democratic-run cities burned to the ground in the event of acquittal. He's absolutely right about that. I want to play you the oldie from Kamala Harris back on, I guess, the late night show or whatever. She's talking about, this is right before the November 3rd election, the 2020 election, and she's talking about the riots in the street. Keep in mind, this woman here personally bailed out rioters that committed felonies and committed additional felonies after she bailed them out. She basically called this young man that was shot by police a hero in Kenosha. And the guy that was beating his girlfriend and trying to steal their child, that guy was a hero. So I want to let you hear Kamala Harris, in her own words, talking about the riots and need for, well, you listen to it and we'll talk about it.
I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States. I'm just not seeing the reporting on it that I had
that's right.
for the first few weeks.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not, this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
And we should not.
Clear that I know that.
So basically, she's telling you like she did in that space video the other day. You can see it with your own eyes. We see it, Kamala, with our very own eyes, like the craters on the moon, gal. I see it. I know it ain't going to stop. And you're wanting to, I guarantee you that if they do pray, they're praying for an acquittal of Rittenhouse. They do not. They being the progressive media, the mainstream media, and the progressives that own the Democratic Party. I'm not saying every Democratic voter, just to be clear. I'm saying the people that have taken over the Democratic Party, not the party of JFK, not the party that said, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Their new motto basically is that these are my words, but this is basically the new Democratic mantra. tell me where I'm wrong. It's America sucks. It's always sucked. It sucks for some more than others, and if you vote for us, we'll make it suck for everybody equally. That is the new mantra, in my opinion, opinionated fact nonetheless, of the Democratic Party. And so if you doubt for 1 second that the media, and I would, like this article talks about, and I would add these Democrats like Kamala Harris, she told you right there in her own words that it doesn't need to stop. And she was talking about the violence surrounding the George Floyd trial and everything, when literally America was burning. So, you know, no doubt about that. All right, we're going to move on. But before we get into the next story, I want to tell you about a great opportunity that's unique to you, my listeners. Go above the video, no matter when or where you're watching it. Look at the link, johnmartinhealth.com. That's johnmartinhealth.com. Follow the directions, and you will get a $50 value, absolutely free, a bottle of zinc and a bottle of vitamin D3. You'll get both of these absolutely free. Just follow the directions, because I want you to be healthy. And one of the things that we should all agree on coming out of this pandemic, however you want to say it, is that we need to be healthier. And it starts with good nutrition and good supplements. Go to johnmartinhealth.com, get your free bottle of zinc and D3. Check it out. All right, let's get into this next story. This comes to you from the Daily Wire. House Republicans release whistleblower email showing FBI put the force of the FBI is being put on American citizens and basically label them terrorists. You probably can't read that letter, that statement, but that's basically what this is saying. And there's an example of a terrorist right there, man. A lovely lady right there, a lovely terrorist. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy Biden's Justice Department for egregious abuse of power on Tuesday and demanded Attorney General Merrick Garland. Thank God he's not on the Supreme Court. It's the only thing I appreciate from old Turtlehead Mitch McConnell is keeping Merrick Garland off the court. Testify before Congress about counterterrorism the FBI is using to investigate parents. But this should be shocking that they're using the FBI to investigate American citizens, parents of people who are just concerned about the education of children. But it's not shocking, because if you look at this, and this is an actual screenshot from the Department of Homeland Security back about 3 or 4 months ago, leading up to 9/11, when they list what domestic terrorists might be. And they basically say anybody who was at January 6th, that kind of thing. But they also go on to talk about people who celebrate religious holidays. So, you know, I mean, that's going to be a different knock on your door at Thanksgiving. Are you ready for that? The FBI, we're going to check you out. Domestic, and anybody who commemorates 9/11, the worst sneak attack in the history of our nation after Pearl Harbor. And it's just amazing that the FBI, I mean, more and more I hear about this, the FBI is in the middle of a lot of stuff. It's become basically a tool of the government to terrorize American citizens. I mean, tell me where I'm wrong. Let's keep going. McCarthy blasted Biden. This is the minority leader in the House. Blasted Biden for going after parents instead of actual threats. Right on. He's absolutely spot on about that. This is what he said in a statement. He said, "This is further proof that we have a president," talking about Biden, God help us, in the White House, "who is more interested in going after his own citizens, including concerned parents, than he is in going after actual threats," right? I mean, he's spot on there. "This raises the question that should alarm every American." And he's right about that. McCarthy's right. This should alarm you, even if you 100% don't agree and you're anti-Trump and pro-Biden or whatever. I mean, I don't know who the heck that is. There aren't any passionate Biden supporters, by the way. I'm yet to find any. There are definitely people passionate about Trump, and some people want to, would walk through fire for Donald Trump, and there's some people like to push him in it. But I don't think anybody feels that much passion about Joe Biden. It says, if the Biden administration is using our country's top law, talking about the FBI enforcement agency, to go after parents, what are the actual threats they are ignoring? Well, we already know that. The threats that they're focusing on. I mean, do you remember this billboard? There was a billboard. I saw one Tampa. And it talked about, this was right after the January Insurrection Day, when they're asking the American people to basically rat out on any of your neighbors. Essentially, they're saying, do you know anybody wearing a MAGA hat? Do you know anybody who went to Washington, D.C. on or around January 6th? This is happening all the time. And in this particular letter that they had from the FBI, they're asking people to basically rat on their fellow people that are going to these PTA meetings and to these school board meetings, and essentially they want you to spy upon them. The House GOP leader was responding to the revelation the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, has created a threat tag, check this out, to flag all investigations into potential criminal threats, harassment, and intimidation of educators. And basically what that means is that if you go to the school board and raise heck about what your students are actually being taught, what your children are being taught, you could be intimidating educators and therefore a potential criminal threat. So now one thing about this, now we know the new face of terror. We absolutely know the new face of terror. Can we put the new face of terror up there? I wanted, anyway, I had the new face of terror was going to be, you can leave that up there, was going to be, there it is, the new face of terror, Larry Elder. Billy Bob put, yeah, that's the new face of terror, man. No, actually, that's the new, we got it, I'm sorry, we're confused here. It's my fault. That's not the new face of terror. Let's get it right. Larry Elder, we now know, is the new face of white supremacists. That's what he is. And the parents, they are, that right there, there's the new face of terrorism. Think about that. So we got Larry Elder represents the new face of white supremacists, and turn around, and the parents now, if you're concerned about your children, you are the new face of terrorism. Because think about this. The reason why these people are, and I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but the majority of the people that started going, and of course Loudoun County in Virginia, and we know what happened in the election there, and there's more and more data coming out now that people are really outraged about what the Democratic Party, maybe we'll do a story on that in the not too distant future. We've kind of been keeping you abreast of that. But keep in mind that the people that came to Loudoun County and really all over the country, they're even doing it right here in my backyard here in Alachua County in Gainesville, Florida, going to school board meetings, is because, and this is one of the things that I hope is a silver lining in the pandemic, the fact, I'm not downplaying it, that kind of thing, but there is one potential silver lining, and that is that maybe we're waking up in general. We're waking up to the fact that our freedom is just one little tin-pot dictator, mayor, governor, or whatever decision away from being taken from us. Because I've told you this many times, but if I say it, it bears repeating, that when the whole pandemic came down upon us, the thing that shocked me the most was how quickly we gave up our freedoms without really any debate whatsoever. There was no legislation passed, no vote, no debate, no nothing. We just fell in line like sheep. And it goes back to Thomas Jefferson, people who are actually Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin basically said people who give up their freedom for security deserve and will have neither. And so that's what we did. That is what we did. So I'm hoping that one of the silver linings coming out of this whole pandemic thing is that parents finally, now they heard this, but people are busy. I get it. I understand you're busy and you're just going out for your day and you're doing your thing, trying to take care of your family, and you kind of take for granted that school is a safe place for your children. And we think about physical safety, but what about mental, spiritual safety as well, because they're being indoctrinated. And so one of the silver linings, Billy Bob tells me to get on with it, and I am right now, out of this pandemic, is that parents actually got to see through the Zoom schooling and all that what their kids were actually being taught. And it wasn't just even at public schools, it was even at some of these high dollar, and we did multiple shows on that high dollar private schools. People were like, wow, they're being taught this crap. And parents spoke up about it, and for that, they're being labeled as a terrorist. Let's read a couple of more things with the time we have left in this article. It's kind of lengthy, but we're just going to highlight a few more things. Agents, talking about FBI agents, were notified of a threat tag and this is the heading, EDYO officials to assign to any threats against school administrators, board members, staff, or teachers. Now, it's one thing to actually threaten someone, to say, you know, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to hurt you, you know, that kind of thing. But basically, most of the threats, and I'm not absolving people of physical threats at all, but the vast majority of so-called threats were, hey, you need to do something or we're going to vote your behind out of here. And keep in mind, like in Loudoun County, we use that. The Loudoun County School Board, including the superintendent of schools, lied in front of the cameras and to these parents about an issue involving the rape of a 13-year-old girl. They essentially looked and say, we don't know anything about it, when not only was that a lie, not only did they know about it, but they got that kid actually transferred to another school where he committed another rape. And so parents have a little bit of right, especially in Loudoun County, to be just a tad bit upset. They certainly don't have the, they haven't done, you know, when you talk about, we talked about this Rittenhouse case and this guy, this prosecutor, and it's almost laughable if it wasn't for the seriousness of it. In his closing argument, he literally talks about one of the guys that Rittenhouse killed, and he talks about how he didn't do much that day. He set fires, he swung a chain at somebody, he pushed a dumpster toward and tried to barricade police with it on fire. He pushed a trailer out there with some other people and set it on fire, and then he came after Rittenhouse. I mean, this guy, he paints it, he literally said that this Dinger guy, or Binger, what a dinger he is, said that there were heroes in this professional protest crowd. Check out our podcast from yesterday. So I say this, the FBI, man, is way off base. I'm not saying every member of the FBI, but the bureaucracy that is running the show that led the charge against Donald Trump when they knew it was a lie, the whole thing, you know, stroke and strock and everything else, all that, and now how they're literally conducted the terrorist attack or planned terrorist attack on Gretchen Miller in Michigan. If you don't know what I'm talking about, basically there were 5 people that were involved in that planning. 3 of them were FBI agents, and there's more and more evidence coming out every day that the FBI might have had some role in January 6th. I mean, this thing needs to be cleaned up, and it ain't going to be cleaned up under Garland and Biden, that's for sure. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go to all our social media sites, like them, share them with others. Remember the opportunities, johnmartinhealth.com in the link above the video, and BDU, all of that. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Let's all pray for this great nation. She needs it and deserves it for sure. But above all else, like I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.